Hey, Dr. Nina, and welcome to Your Body, and Your Health. We are at episode number 5, and I cannot believe it. The time is just really, really flying, but I appreciate all of you who tune in religiously to this show. It is all about you, your body, and your health, and I do want you to know that I appreciate every single eye and every single question that tunes in on Fridays at 12 p.m. and after the fact. So thank you. Thank you for being here. We got an exciting show today. It's all about fat. We're talking about fat. It's the dieter's nemesis. Fat, the fat in the food we eat, that is dietary fat. And I got a whole lot to tell you about it. But before we get started, as always, I want you to go ahead and leave me a comment letting me know where you're tuning in from. And we are going to dive into the subject because we got a whole lot to talk about. Oh, too, always, as always, make sure you start asking questions now. If you have some questions that you want answered that are related to fat or dietary fat before I get to the subject or during the show, go ahead and put those questions in the queue. If I don't get to those questions during the show, I will most certainly get to them after the fact. So let's go ahead and turn our attention to fat. So even though I already said that it's kind of the dieter's nemesis, the truth is dietary fat is not just about our waistlines. We actually need it. We need fat. We need a certain amount of fat just to function. It has a ton of vital functions in the body, ranging from energy storage, which we don't believe energy storage is calorie storage. So basically, that's what causes us to gain weight. And although we kind of look at it as fat makes us gain weight, fat is actually energy storage. It's a primal mechanism to really reduce our chances of starving. So it does have a purpose in storing a certain amount for energy storage. We need it for insulation. In many ways, fat keeps us warm. And we also need it to protect vital organs. In a previous show, we talked about belly fat and that visceral fat that surrounds all the organs. But the fact of the matter is, a certain amount of that visceral fat is needed to protect those vital organs. And there are many, many other functions. Honestly, that's a whole show, all the functions of fat. So I won't dive into those too much, but I do want you to know another very important function that many people do not consider when it comes to eating fat is that it helps the body absorb what are called the fat soluble vitamins. And these are vitamins A, D, E, and K. So look at it like this. If you eat foods, mainly whole foods, right, that are rich in vitamins A, D, E, and K, well, you won't properly absorb those vitamins if you're not eating enough fat. So I think about that like something like a leafy green vegetable. If you put fat-free dressing on it, say in a salad, you're not really going to absorb those nutrients in the leafy green vegetables. So, like I said, fat has a whole lot of important functions. And that's just something I want you to really consider as we move into the show. Now, there are 3 essential fats that we need, and I'm sure you've heard about these. Triglycerides, yes, we need a certain amount of those, even though they're looked at as bad things. We need a certain amount of cholesterol. Yes, old cholesterol. That's another thing that's viewed as bad, and we do need a certain amount of it. And the other essential fatty acids. Now, these are the ones that we're going to talk about today. And if you watch the promo for the show, these are your monounsaturated, your polyunsaturated, your saturated, your trans. We're going to talk about all of that stuff today. So again, ask those questions if you have them. I want to reiterate, as I do every single week, this show is all about improving your health span throughout your lifespan. What is that? That is the number of years that you are actually healthy. Our lifespan is predetermined. We do not know how long we're going to live. Our health span is something that is under our control. And since our bodies need fat for optimal and proper functioning throughout the lifespan, this is yet another subject that we need to talk about. Our successful aging segment, which is at the end of every show, this is going to be a hot topic. Why dietary fat is the best anti-aging secret. So yes, it is. And we're going to talk about why at the end of the show. So make sure you continue to tune in. So let's go ahead and move into the meat of the topic. And let me see who I have here. Hi, everybody. Everyone coming in, posting. Hey, hey, hey. Ask those questions. Let's move on. So, a quick rundown of dietary fat in general. Fat is actually one of three vital macronutrients, which I'm sure you've heard of. Carbohydrates, ring a bell? Then you have your fat, and then you have your protein. Now, believe it or not, your body actually needs all three, in spite of the fact that one of those that starts with the C is constantly shunned in the media. Your body needs a certain amount of all three of these. Now, we're going to talk more about carbohydrates and protein in the next two episodes. So stay tuned because we're going to talk about all of these macronutrients throughout the course of October. So you'll learn everything you need to know. Now, I want to talk about these numbers that you see at the bottom. So you see that fat, 9 calories per gram. You see that carbohydrates, 4 calories per gram, and that protein, 4 calories per gram. What you're seeing here is an explanation as to why fat comes with such a high calorie count, or should I say fatty foods. Though fat is indeed a dietary necessity, compared to carbohydrates and fat, it comes at a high calorie tally. Every single gram of carbohydrate or fat yields about 9 calories. So if you have a food that has 10 grams of fat in it, it's going to yield 90 calories from that fat. I don't know if you recall, they don't do it anymore, but the food label used to have the calorie count and then it would have calories from fat. That was because the number of calories that are yielded by a gram of fat are so much higher, they deemed it important enough to include it on foods. Now, on the flip side, you have your carbs and your proteins, which again, we'll talk about later. They only yield 4 calories per gram. So you can almost look at it as high fat foods are inherently high calorie foods. You get that? So whenever you see a food that's high in fat, just based on that 9 calories per gram, you're going to get more fat in a higher calorie tally. But as we'll discuss through this show, it is not that simple. It is not as simple as a calorie from fat is a calorie from fat and a calorie from carbs is a calorie from carbs, etc. Different fats have different effects, and they are not all created equal. And even though they have these calorie tallies to go with them, certain fats do certain things. And this is what we're going to move on to. Hence, basically, the terms good fat versus bad fat, which I'm sure you've heard of. Now, certain fats promote weight loss and they lower disease risk. On the flip side, you have others that trigger weight gain and they could potentially damage your health. So again, a calorie from fat is not a calorie from fat. Please remember that. Remember that. So let's talk about the good and versus the bad fats. I want to see how much you know. How much do you know? Can anyone name me the two quote unquote good fats? Put it in the comments box if you know. And then someone else name me the 2 bad fats. Go ahead and put it in the comments box. If you're an overachiever, give me all 4. And I'm going to move on to my discussion and see, if you all guessed it right. I don't have a prize or anything, but you will get my gold star and my fist bump if you got it right. So there are 2 main types of fat naturally found in the foods we eat. You'll see saturated fats and you'll see unsaturated fats. And I'm sure you've heard of these. Now, all foods, which you may or may not know, all foods are comprised of some combination of both. Yes, all foods contain unsaturated and saturated fats. Plant-based foods too, believe it or not. So I'm going to throw up a figure and you're going to get some of the answers to those. Let me see if anyone answered. You're going to get that answer then coming up in my figure. Now, but as I go into bringing up that figure, know that the foods containing mostly unsaturated fat are typically liquid at room temperature. These will be your olive oils and your canola oils, and really any of the oils that quote unquote have been viewed as healthy, avocado oil. We'll go through some more of them. But also know that foods largely comprised of saturated fats they tend to be solid at room temperature. And this is your coconut oil. So a lot of, I know everyone has either used coconut oil when cooking or on your face or on your body or somewhere. It's like really a hot thing. But notice how coconut oil is solid, like lard used to be, like that Crisco stuff, that it's solid like that, and palm oils as well. Now, unsaturated fats can be further classified. So it goes even further. You got your saturated, your unsaturated, and then your unsaturated goes into your monounsaturated fats, which some will call muffas or mufas. And you have your polyunsaturated fats, which could be called puffas or poofas. So it doesn't end there. Then you have your omega-3s and omega-6s that those polyunsaturated fats are divided into. That's a lot of fat, isn't it? So besides these two, this is where it gets complicated. I'm sorry. Besides these two broad classifications and the little classifications under them, there's a third type, which I'm sure you've heard of: trans fat. Now, anytime you've seen partially hydrogenated, insert some derivative of it, that's a trans fat. Now, all these fats are what make us have to really, for the sake of making things easier for you, make it a good versus a bad. So the good and the bad label is essentially related to the unique compositions of these saturated, unsaturated, and trans fats. You get that? So I have a figure to summarize all of them. Can I get that figure, please? And hey, everybody. Someone got my good fats right. Thanks, Darlene. All right, take a look at this figure. This is kind of summarizing, give me a little visual of the fats we talked about as I kind of dive into them. So monounsaturated fats, that's the first section. Monounsaturated fats is really a combination of different fats, right? So these MUFAs or muffas, these have long been known to protect against heart disease, diabetes, and various cancers for two reasons. One, the chemical structure. So basically how they move through the arteries because they're liquids. And also the combination of phytonutrients, which are the plant-based nutrients I talk about a lot, those beta carotenes or carotenoids, those flavonoids, all of those phytonutrients housed in those MUFA or MUFA-rich food sources. Well, that's another thing that makes them so preventive against disease. Now, oleic acid, which you've probably heard of before, is the most common in nature, and this one is widely present in the fat or the items you see here: your olives and olive oils, avocado, and other plant-based oils, and your nuts and seeds, and their butters too. So your almonds, your walnuts, your pecans, all of these have these MUFAs in them. So the key takeaway really from monounsaturated fats or your MUFAs or muffas, love them. They're good for you. And I'll talk about, how much you should be eating of each as we move on to the later segment. Now let's move on to the ones that are not so simple. Your polyunsaturated fats, which we're moving into now. So I split them here into omega-3 fats and omega-6 fats for a reason. So if we look at them collectively, the omega-3s and omega-6s, well, these collectively support heart health, brain function throughout the lifespan, metabolism, and they also affect normal development and growth in general from infancy through adulthood. So if you've ever heard, if you had a baby, I'm sure you've heard them say, make sure they're getting omega-3s in their diet. That's for that normal development and growth and brain function. Now, both of these are considered essential fatty acids. Why essential? Because your body needs them. It doesn't naturally produce them from scratch. So your body basically needs these particular fats. But in the case of omega-6, you can have too much of a good thing. I need you to look in my eyes now. So let's take that figure down for a second. This is where it gets really tricky. We'll bring the figure back up. In the case of omega-6, you can have too much. Excess intake, get this, can cause inflammation. And there's that inflammation again. I always talk about it. That's that thing, that process that's linked to every single chronic disease you can possibly think of. And out of all things, something that we call a good fat can actually trigger that too. But there is a solution. There is an ideal balance. So you saw those omega-6 foods. I'll put that figure back up in a second, but you saw those omega-3s and you saw those omega-6 rich foods. And lucky for you, I'm going to write an article on this because I know everybody can't retain all of this, but you saw those. You want to have a ratio of somewhere between 1:1 and 4:1. Now that's omega-6 to omega-3s. Just to give you a point of reference, the average ratio for Americans is somewhere between 10:1 to 20:1. Did you just hear what I just said? And then we sit and wonder why we're so sick. So if that average ratio is 1:1 to 4:1 from omega-6 to omega-3s, and we're over double time, almost triple time, quadruple that much, well, that's one of the reasons why we're so inflamed. So the key takeaway, and this is a real key takeaway, all polyunsaturated fats or PUFAs or PUFAs are inherently good when there's good balance in your diet. They're all good with good balance, just like anything else. Too much of a good thing can be a bad thing. So take in more omega-3s, or I should say, take them in more than you would normally to make sure that you're getting that proper ratio. Now, the dense sources of omega-3s, we can bring that figure back up, are many. They include oily fish. These are the threes now. Oily fish, if you don't like oily fish or if you have allergies, they're in whole soy foods as well. Walnuts, chia seeds, flax seeds. You have plenty of ways to get it in. And sprinkle 2 tablespoons of chia seeds in a smoothie or on your oatmeal, and you got it. That's a serving. Now, omega-6s on the flip side are widely present in animal-based foods, like some nuts and seeds, and mostly vegetable oils. Basically, anything you can name that's kind of sketchy anyway, like, usually the controversies around stuff like peanut butter and, certain nuts and canola oil, that's because of the omega-6. So they're not created equal. And I want you to know that. Now, I got to talk about this big one. I'm going to say it and then we're going to take the slide off. But you see that saturated fat, it's in 2 places. I have it with eggs and red meat, and then I have it with dairy foods. Now let's talk about saturated fat. Here, I gotta look in your eyes again for this one. Because this one is gonna make you really think. I want to ask you a question. Do you think saturated fats are bad fats or good fats? And I want you to put it in that queue. And I want you to do it fast. And don't be afraid. There's no right or wrong answer. It really isn't. I just want to know what you think. Is saturated fat a good fat or a bad fat? And if you're really feeling jiggy tonight or today, tell me why. Tell me why. Now I'm going to look at those answers as I move on. Is it good or bad though? I want to know where you stand. Because mainstream medicine, which I don't have a problem with, this is Black doctors, I don't have a problem with it, but they've long deemed saturated fat as a major cause of heart disease, right? Hence the bad label. So saturated fat has been labeled as a bad fat because of a linkage to heart disease. I'll get back to that. Now, most talked about is that inherent ability to raise LDL cholesterol. That's those low density lipoproteins. That's that bad cholesterol, another label. I don't like labels, but that's another label. Less talked about. Saturated fats also raise high density lipoprotein cholesterol. Now, that's the good stuff. Did you hear what I just said? So it does both. So here's the thing. Despite widespread belief, and this is the truth, go research some scientific articles and journals and look at the latest status. there is little. Cholesterol has none. So cholesterol, we're not talking about that today, but cholesterol, if you notice, they don't even talk about that anymore because cholesterol, none, no linkage between saturated fat with any positive or negative effects on heart health. None, nada, little, if it exists, and it's correlational. So the key takeaway from this, just like we have what I just described in the polyunsaturated fats, where we talked about omega-3s and omega-6s, we kind of talked about that ideal ratio. The key takeaway is that natural sources of saturated fat, and these include some of the ones I showed you on that list: unprocessed meats, full fat dairy foods, and coconut oil for those of you who use it. My keto folks love their coconut oil. These do not increase the risk of heart disease. And I can look you in your eyes and tell you that. The key is to choose them wisely and eat them in sensible amounts. That's it. Choose them widely, eat them in sensible amounts. Now, eating trans fat, those foods, now that's a whole nother contributor to disease and poor health. More than saturated fats could ever be. But what's happened is saturated fats are often conflated with trans fats. So they put those together. And then saturated fats are also conflated with processed foods. So a lean cut of filet is not the same as eating a Polish. It's not. It never will be. A lean cut of filet is not the same as eating beef jerky. It isn't. And know that when we're talking about the differences between those two, those are not created equal. So we're talking about quality. And let's stop conflating processed foods, trans fats, and all of that stuff with saturated fats, because the truth is eggs are good for you. And red meat is good for you. And coconut oil does have benefits. So I say it's a good fat. But just watch what you eat, which ones you eat, and eat them sensibly. Can I get an amen on that? Even if you don't give me an amen on that, that's okay. But again, this is no pressure to eat them either. If you don't want them, don't eat them. But I'm just saying, for those of you who do enjoy them, eat them. Now, those trans fats, that's that burger and those French fries and those donuts I had on the other one. Those are widely present in everything we call bad. And again, often conflated with those saturated fats, the cakes, the cookies, the crackers, fried foods, French fries, you name it, Crisco, margarine. Yes, margarine. All of those. Those are bad fats. They deserve that label. And honestly, it's best to limit your intake of them. Now, these are solid fats that your body just can't break down. And there's no debate about that. Your body can't do anything with them. I will say that there are trace amounts present in some animal-based foods, but those pose no real risk. So if you're ever in doubt about whether your food has trans fats, check your nutrition label and look for anything that sounds like partially hydrogenated fats, and it contains the bad stuff. So I know I threw a lot of information at you, so I'm going to put up a quick slide to summarize what I said. Because when it comes to eating fats, it's all about how much you eat and the general quality of your diet. But remember, again, high fat foods can drive up calorie counts, whether good or bad. So just like anything else, you want to eat those in moderation. At the end of the day, choosing your fat and eating it sensibly matters. So let's talk about my 6 key takeaways before we move into successful aging. Combine every single fatty food you eat with veggies and fruits. Again, that goes to that helping your body kind of unleash all of those yummy micronutrients that's housed in those foods. So always combine fats with a veggie or a fruit. For your MUFAs and PUFAs, more omega-3s. Remember that, because if you're eating more omega-3s, you're sure to have a good ratio. So about 3 to 4 daily servings of those is where you want to be. Seafood and poultry, you want to be at about 2 to 3 daily servings of those. And I added poultry because you may get some different kinds of fat in there. So a combination of those, but know that that seafood is going to give you those omega-3s. Whole eggs, you can eat up to 4 to 5 daily servings. You can eat unlimited whites. Those are just proteins, but the good stuff is in the yolk. Always remember that. And that's contrary to what you've seen. Again, cholesterol does nothing for your health. Dietary cholesterol has little to no impact. So you can eat those eggs. Lean meat, you can eat 1 to 2 servings twice a week. Always eat your lean meats with leafy greens. You'll thank me later, because the leafy greens and the lean meat together have more holistically healthy effects. And finally, your dairy and soy foods, and this can be or soy foods. You want to eat about 3 to 4 daily servings of those. And that is going to get you the rest, some of those omega-6 in a good way, omega-3s as well, and some of that good saturated fat. So that was a lot. I'm sure you'll have questions. Keep asking them for me, and I will get to those. But for now, we want to get to the successful aging segment, and because I really want to talk about this. It's actually pretty cool. So I said it, I'll say it again. Fat is essential for just about every single bodily function you can think of. Heart health, didn't mention it, hormone production, brain function, I mentioned. But here is the deal. It's also essential for healthy cell membranes. What does that even mean? Well, your cells, which I'm sure you've heard of, cells make up organs and tissues and all that other good stuff. Well, those membranes on those cells are mostly comprised of fat. This is why eating a low-fat diet makes us age faster. Let me explain. If you're in a situation where you're not eating enough fat, those cell membranes are going to be weak. And if they're weak, they're unable to really stay plump and hydrated and beautiful. So as the cell starts to shrivel all up, so do we. And that's basically what happens when we do a low fat diet. Now, when you talk about a diet with healthy amounts of fats, well, eating quality fats, the good ones, they're going to keep those cell membranes very strong and very healthy. They also are going to counter that natural inflammatory process that also comes with aging. I've said it in previous shows. Yes, aging is associated with a natural inflammation. It just occurs as we age. Science is still trying to tell us why, but it does. So eating good fats has those two purposes that makes us, or those good fats, that makes us age more successfully, more beautifully. Why do you think you're always seeing, some sort of fat-like product in some of those face creams and those products, those anti-aging products? That's why. Because fat in that case is a good thing. And fat will help us age successfully. So I threw a lot of information at you there. So hopefully you get that as well. I'm all about fat. Just in case you didn't notice, I'm kind of a fan of fat. And for good reason. I mean, we need our fat. We need our fat to age successfully, be healthy, and all of that good stuff. So I want to encourage you to choose your fat wisely, but eat it and enjoy it, because besides the fact that it comes with all these health benefits, it just makes stuff taste good. Would you agree? It just makes stuff taste good. And it also has satiating effects on the body. It helps us feel fuller, sooner, and for longer periods of time. So that about wraps up all I have to say about dietary fat. I hope you learn something good. And remember, I'll get to those questions if I didn't, or your answers if I didn't get to them during the show. Some of them were coming up at different speeds. And as always, visit thatsaladlady.com. Little shameless plug, those 6 meals that you saw, yeah, those recipes are at thatsaladlady.com. So you can get those. If that stuff look good to you, those recipes are actually at thatsaladlady.com, and many more to show you how to get in good amounts of healthy fats and other nutrients in your diet. And you can find me at That Salad Lady on all social media channels, including Facebook. Instagram, you'll find me at that.salad.lady. But just put That Salad Lady in the search box and you should find it. I give plenty of tips on healthy eating and healthy living on all my social media channels. And if you're on TikTok, definitely go there, because you'll see a side of Dr. Nina you've never seen before. So as always, thank you for attending, and I will see you next week again as we talk about carbohydrates, the old carbohydrates. So I'm looking forward to that conversation. I hope you all have a good weekend, a good holiday weekend if you're celebrating the holiday or off work, and I will see you next time. Take care.